In this session, we will try to cover the concept of cycles and the whole journey of a patient as part of the cycle and how it is handled and what are the various elements that are involved. And let's start by allocating a cycle to this patient. Uh, right now, if you look at the journey, this patient is not having any cycle. Okay. First thing is to allocate a cycle. You can go to the allocation screen and select a cycle here. I'm adding an IVF cycle here. And as you can see, we've advised IVF earlier based on a doctor advice. That entry is there. We are trying to link it to advice so that we can calculate what is the conversion rate when it comes to how many advices are getting converted to cycle is an important parameter to track, right? That's why we are trying to link it to the advice and also select the doctor and date and go ahead and make allocation. Now you can see cycle showing up here. As you can see, the entire journey also is visible. It started with a registration, then an advice added, a few investigations added, and a cycle added right now. Like I said last time also, every time when there's a cycle, when there's any service added, corresponding bill get created, which can be seen here. And that billing aspect is immediately integrated in terms of making sure everything is tracked as part of the bills. So since there is an open bill, the cycle allocation also got added to the same thing. We did a registration. We did an investigation allocation of AMH and baseline scanning, and right now IVF is allocated with this amount. Bill got created with the total amount showing up here. Okay. Going back to the cycle schedule, when we allocate a cycle, it will display what are the various stages of the cycle in this card here. You can see stimulation, OPO, embryo culture, ET, and outcome. These are the stages of a cycle. And how do we track various details here after is something that we'll capture in the section called cycle schedule. Okay, I am going to the cycle schedule now to view all the details. As you all know, cycles include a number of services. Cycle doesn't mean 1.1 lakh is for one thing, right? It involves so many things over a period of next maybe a month or more than at times it can be going on and on for extended periods. So it is important to track what are all included as part of the cycle and whether we are giving only that many services to the patient or are we giving more. Both from a clinic point of view and also the patient point of view. Patient also need to have a very good clarity as to what and all is promised as part of the cycle and whether the patient is actually getting or not. So for that purpose, we created a concept of packaging of cycle, basically. Okay, when the package is there, what are all included as part of the cycle is pre-configured. For example, in this case, in this example, we are saying in this cycle called IVF, these are all the inclusions. For example, LH is added 2 times as part of the cycle itself, no additional payment required for the patient. Similarly, E2 5 times, progesterone 5 times, and follicular study scans to be conducted 5 times. And further below, you can see consultation 3 times and consumables anyway. At each stage, certain consumables are anyway used, which is not billed separately to the patient. But we do track that also so that you are able to control your inventory cost against the cycle, right? Similarly, sometimes in some cycles, you may have the drugs also included. Not always, but in some packages, you may want to include the drugs also. So whatever is possible to include as part of the cycle, or whatever is defined to be part of the package, all that is pre-configured. And as per the configuration, a schedule gets created here. Okay, that's the fundamental essence of this whole packaging. And then coming to the actual usage of these inclusions, first and foremost thing for a doctor is to decide on what protocol are we going to use, right? Let's say in this case we're using a long protocol. Once selected, it also opens up an edit form to create certain, update certain details. Let's say LMP and down regulation date and stimulation date. And other things are more of estimated data. We don't know at this point, but at a suitable time, at the time of trigger, all those dates also can be given. Now, based on this, a stimulation chart / a cycle calendar gets created here. Calendar displays basically the entire stimulation chart in terms of what is the duration of the total stimulation and what are the drugs given during this stimulation period. And because of drugs, how is the follicle growth and how the hormone changes are happening. Right now it's all empty because we just added, no service is added yet. But realistically speaking, if you keep on adding different services and different pharmacy items, drug items to the patient, and also update the corresponding reports, those details automatically show up here. That includes follicle sizes, endometrium, then all the investigation values, and also drug dosages will show up in this. We'll cover that in a short while. So we've updated the protocol details, and next thing is stages. Every cycle will have certain number of stages, and depending on the variations of your cycle structure, at times you can have multiple, occurrences of same stage. For example, if you have a package, IVF plus 2 FET, 3 FET, these are all possibilities these days, right? So if your package structure includes multiple time repetition of same stage, you can do that. Okay, so in the workflow, you'll have FET 2 times and all that. And as and when you are actually starting that stage, corresponding reports get open up. I'll show that right now. Let's say, assuming we have started stimulation, the doctor actually says, start this stage now. When the stage is started, it kind of opens up any report that is associated with that. There are, let's say, there's a checklist attached here. I'm not adding all the details, but if the details are updated, it can be seen from the timeline dashboard view itself. For everything, I'll be going back and forth here. If the stage has started, that means if I refresh here, that report can be seen from this page, although it is updated elsewhere in other pages. For a doctor, it is visible here. Not only doctor, any other in-house user, or even the patient can actually see some of these reports if you give them access, right? So since the details are updated, a few details are updated there, and that can be seen here if it is saved. I think I've yet to save that. So similarly, if I start the next stage, which is, let's say, OPU stage, before that, let me show a couple of things. Now that stimulation stage has started, next, during that stimulation period, maybe 10 days, 15 days, whatever, right? You keep on adding, let's say, drugs. As part of this package, let's say, doctor is advising patient to go for certain drugs. Let's say 300 IU is added for today, Gonalev. Now, in terms of the usage, you can see it. It is basically whatever drug that is possible to be allocated as part of this cycle. It is pre-configured for the cycle, and once the 300 drug doses is added, that will be reflected in the calendar. Similarly, at the same time, this also gets to a bill get created for that, and it gets automatically discounted because the patient is actually this is the drug. So we have set certain limit to be discounted. That much discount automatically happens, and if the limit crosses the discount limit, that still stays in the pending status. So essentially, when a drug is allocated, we actually create initially limits up to what limit this drug can be administered, and accordingly the bills get created and auto discounted to the extent of allowed discount. Okay, now let's look at the investigation as well. Let's say I'm adding LH here. I select the doctor and the date. LH is an investigation headed. Let me add a follicular study scan also. Similarly, I can add other investigation, but for demo purpose, let me leave it here. These two investigations, I mean, one scan and one LH as investigations added now. If I go back to the journey page, these are going to be visible. If I look at the investigations, see, LH is added here, and the concerned person, whenever the report details are available, they'll update the values. Okay. Now LH is, let's say, I have updated LH value here. I want to showcase this in the calendar. Obviously, when you go to the calendar, you will see that LH is added on this day, and its report detail also will be visible there. This is LH. Now the value is updated here. The status is changed to reported. And similarly, let me also update follicle study scan, which is very, very important. A patient goes through multiple scans during the stimulation. And to make it simple, the nurse who is along with the doctor can make a note of the report details then and there, instead of making a note and updating later. Some details: endometrium thickness 11.55, and next, more importantly here, in case of follicle study scan, there's a standard report here. It kind of captures all the number of follicles on both right and left ovary of different sizes. You can see the follicle size here, and the left and right counts. Okay. Now I'm just updating a few rows here, not all. Depending on how many are there, one can go and update that. So let me say I'm marking it as reported and saving it. Again, it's not accurate data, but some can say now once the report is updated, what one can see is even in this page, the details can be seen directly here by the doctor, and also you can see that in the calendar. This is what I'm saying. LH 12.111 is visible directly here. For a doctor, you not only see the complete schedule, you also see the values here. And further, if you click on this, it will open that the same report, the entire report with the reference values and all that. Another thing that happens is the calendar. If you notice, some time back when we added, none of these were filled in. But now, whatever the actions that we performed here, we added 300 IU of gonal F, and we've tested LH for its value, and we updated there in the report, but you can see that in the calendar. Similarly, follicle study scan details of the, on the left and right ovary, what is the count of what size, all that is actually showing up here along with the endometrium thickness. So this, in a sense, it's the complete summary of a, what you call a stimulation chart, right? Or, cycle calendar, whichever the nomenclature you may be using. It's a complete stimulation chart, and assuming day after day, if this is happening, right, then at the end of the entire cycle, by the time you complete, you come to the trigger level, and all the details are visible here. Your decision to take, when to take trigger also can be easily done by looking at this. And more importantly, you can print this entire thing and give it to patient as a complete stimulation chart. You may not give this on a daily basis, but to understand the complete summary of an IVF center, this one chart is good enough in terms of the complete stimulation part of it, right? That way, the calendar acts as a, primarily it's like a stimulation report with all the details during the entire journey of stimulation, actually. So that kind of complete stimulation, and then next, if I cover the next stages, let's say OPU is the stage. So we've started another stage called OPU stage here. Okay, this is very, very important stage because a lot of tracking happens here. Now, when we start a stage, right, any report that is configured for that stage will be open for updates, right? Here I'm going to update the oocyte aspiration report. As part of artist configuration, you will always get a standard report, but if you need to make any changes to this report, adding more sections, or reducing some sections, all that is possible. It's a simple configuration. We can easily do that. You can also do it. We can train you, and but otherwise, a generic report, which is pretty standard, is already there, and the concerned person, maybe nurse or embryology team itself, can go and update the details here. I'm not updating all, but most of the times, if you notice here, right, we advise you to select from the list instead of typing. All that is configurable, so it is much more important to configure your reports in such a manner that data tracking is easier, right? You try to give options so that the end user can just select it rather than type it. Okay. Now, once the report is updated, there is a provision to upload all the oocytes. Here, there's a oocyte detail tab is there. If you go there, and you can browse all the oocytes, not one by one. Actually, you can upload multiple oocytes in a single. It's taking 4 right now. So these oocytes are now uploaded. Now, after the uploading, it is expected to, your team is expected to update the parameters so that this information is going to be useful for you in multiple places. So it's one-time update here. It'll be there forever kind of thing. I'm just updating one or two here to show the difference, how an updated and not updated one looks different, right? So let's say this one is a good quality oocyte is kind of this green is indicating that, and yellow is average, and if it is poor, maybe red color and all that. So that same thing now I can see from the from the dashboard page. So just although if you look at the OPU status, OPU report update, it's a third stream, right? We are going to schedule from there to another page and all that. But for the actual critical user, the doctors and embryologists, they don't have that much time, so they can actually directly view that from here, both the report and the oocyte details. This report, I think I only added a few details, but assuming all the other details are updated, you will have all the information here. Now, OPU also, basically the oocyte details, including the images and all that, can be seen from here because, like I said, no, for a doctor, time is of the essence. So they need to actually see the details on the first page itself, including some of these parameters. Like we updated this to be MI2 and M2 or M2, right? M2 or M1. And the color indicates whether it's good, average, or poor quality. And one can actually print this to cover all the oocytes into one, A4 size formatted page, along with the patient details and the clinic details, like a formal report. In case you are giving it to patient, you can give this. Will add to professionalism and make your center look better. Right now, we've completed the oocyte part of it. The next thing is basically embryo culture. Okay, now I'm starting that stage also. Remember, every time I'm changing the status or starting the stage, the color is changing to a different color compared to what it was earlier. Now here as well, there's a lot of data tracking. So it will open up another page because the amount of data that we track in these reports is actually vast. So it will take you to another page. This is an embryologist page. They update all the relevant details here. A lot of details are here, but again, you can configure to either make it better, make it smaller or bigger, whichever way, right? And everywhere it is mostly, details are selectable from the list of values, unless it is absolutely, a text field, right? So that's the report embryology worksheet. And then next thing is this entire oocyte to embryo journey, which is important because from day 0 to day 5, day 6, how the oocyte is actually going through, what kind of transformation is happening, all that is tracked in the device journey. I'll only take one or two examples. One can upload images also, and okay, I'll take this. So likewise, the oocyte 2, 3, 4 can be updated. I'm not updating all, but the process is similar. And if it is updated, you can actually see that value here. But assuming day after day, you are going ahead and let's say on day 5, you're confirming all these 4 embryos. I'm just taking these 4 embryos. And this is a good quality. I'm giving those parameters here. And next, second one also, I'm selecting the embryo. And whether it is subjected to freezing, yes, it is average. Next. So you can see the same page, you can see, oocyte 1 to 4, similar kind of sections, same sections are repeating for each of the embryo. And in reality, you may have 20 or 30 oocytes that you're working with, but here for just a demo purpose, I'm just taking 3 or 4. There is no limit per se in terms of how many oocyte you can process. It all depends on how many ever oocytes you upload. That many will show up there. So now I'll take a good quality. So we've now uploaded 4 embryos on day 5, saying that all these 4 are kind of done. Let's say, assuming you're done with this embryo culture, no longer you're going to process further. There's a concept of confirm, meaning you're now as an embryologist, you're saying, okay, it is done now. Okay, this is done. So further, next day onwards, you cannot update these. Likewise, I'm confirming the 2nd and 3rd and 4th as well. So what we have done here is, initially as part of oocyte aspiration report, oocyte recording, we have recorded 4 oocytes, and then immediately embryo culture starts from day 0. Details are updated here, And day after day, details are updated for each oocyte. And finally, on day 5, we are kind of concluding that this is done. Okay. Now, with this, what happens is there is another tab here. All the 4 embryos which got created are visible here. And here as well, it is expected to be updated in terms of development stage and, cryo quality, all these nomenclature, and the grade 1, 2, 3. So I just updated one, but similarly, other embryos also can be updated. So this kind of, if I go back to the cycle, embryo culture stage also is now done. There's a report updated. There's also embryos updated here. One can actually see all the embryos with a enlarged picture. They can use their tablet-based app and use there as well. Similarly, it can be printed the way we've done for oocytes. If it is important and relevant to give it to patients, you can do that as well. Okay, so 4 embryos are here in the second page, 2 on second page, 2 on first page. So this is how the cycle progressing through various stages happens. And let's say once the embryos are created, the next thing obviously is either if it is a fresh transfer on day 3, maybe you will do the fresh transfer. Otherwise, an embryo transfer, frozen embryo transfer is done. It may not happen on this timeline. You may add that as a follow-on package also. But the embryos which are created for this patient are all available for the FETs. So this one also is started now. And like every other thing, this also will have its own report. And let me just add some dates here. OPU time, number of all these again reports are like configurable and so many fields are there. I'm just saving with a few details here. And also now there is an option to select embryos, because just now only we created 4 embryos, and these embryos are available for transfer. So embryologist can take a decision looking at these. Let's say 1 embryo is used. Okay. Now, if I go back and check the timeline view, which is primarily the doctors and most users view, right? Whatever the updates and edits that are done by only specific people sitting in the lab, but viewing these details is done by multiple people, whether it is doctors or counselors or nurses or even the patient for themselves. So this entire report is visible here with all the details updated, and also the embryo which is used for transfer. That's how it is going to become like a full-fledged, are kind of done. Let's say, assuming you're done with this embryo culture, no longer you're going to process further. There's a concept of confirm, meaning you're now as an embryologist, you're saying, okay, it is done now. Okay, this is done. So further, next day onwards, you cannot update these. Likewise, I'm confirming the second and third and fourth as well. So what we've done here is, initially as part of oocyte aspiration report, oocyte recording, we've recorded 4 oocytes, and then immediately embryo culture, embryo transfer report. And the last stage is basically tracking the outcome. Again, pretty standard report is already there. Your team can just update the details as to what is the final outcome, right? In terms of pregnancy outcome and clinical pregnancy, and various other details in terms of how many fetal heartbeats and gestational sacs, how many. In general, there's a configuration for 3 gestational sacs, but if it's beyond that, if it's required, that can be done as well. But in general, as a standard, 3 sac level details are configured. But more is not a problem; it can be configured. So this kind of completes an IVF cycle processing. And small little things here and there, one can actually, complete cycle, cancel cycle in between. Cancellation is a very common phenomenon in cycles because at the time of OPU, let's say oocytes are not as expected. So there may be a need to cancel the cycle. So one additional thing that happens here is whenever you cancel anything, normally because the patient has paid for the entire cycle, which covers so many services, but if you're stopping the cycle in between, you are expected to make some payment back to the patient, right? So those things are also configured in the system so that there's no manual intervention. Meaning, let's say if the package is 1.15 lakhs, but if the cancellation happens at OPU, you have to refund, let's say 45,000. That's configured so that when, if at all that cancellation happens at OPU level, that refund bill automatically get created, and there is manual intervention is eliminated, because we don't want any discretion in this whole thing. We want system to drive the whole thing, and that's what we attempted to do this. So that kind of completes, although there may be a few other things, but overall, from a cycle standpoint, processing point of view, it is all done. And all those the icons which we saw from the schedule page also are available here in terms of directly you can go to calendar from here. And there's also something called a consolidated report. While, as you know, we've added reports at various stages, but how about looking all the details in one consolidated details? That is possible with this view. Again, this kind of it is talking about patient details, and we have updated checklist, consent details, then something from the OP report, something from embryology worksheet, something from embryology worksheet, and embryos, oocytes. It's almost like entire thing is actually visible here in this report. You can print that as a full-fledged consolidated report. And on top of the page, you have these the links, right? You can see the embryos also from there. There too, it is possible to see all the embryos. And the cycle as a summary view also is possible to see here. There's a summary cycle if it has OPU, embryo culture, and transfer and outcome. I mean, I'm looking at OPU, embryo culture, embryo transfer, and outcome. These are the primary four stages where details are tracked, and those details are automatically updated here, so that in case of a multi-cycle scenario, you can see each cycle by cycle what is finally the outcome, right? So that's how this report, a consolidated summary view, is useful for doctors to understand. Let's say if there are failed cases, why failed cases, and all that. Again, here also you can click on this consolidated report link to understand what exactly happened in this. Okay, so just to summarize, we've allocated a cycle. Cycle is configurable, a package kind of structures defined upfront, which captures what are all the inclusions in the cycle, including cancellation scenarios. What happens if it is canceled at different stage? All that is pre-configured, and after allocation, a bill got created, and it will flow through the payment, more payment discounts. All that will be managed by your billing team. But from a cycle progression standpoint, it gives us a schedule, and within the schedule, you do the sequentially steps one after the other. First, protocol update, then based on the protocol, a calendar got created, and then you keep on giving various, inclusions to the patient, which gets auto discounted because these are already paid for. And based on those investigations and drugs, how the results are changing. Based on the drugs, how the investigation results are changing, and how the follicle growth is happening. All that is seen in the stimulation chart first. And then with the further stages starting and completing, the other reporting keeps happening, and also oocyte, tracking, oocyte to embryo tracking is entirely done to make it a full-fledged cycle processing. So that's what I wanted to cover about cycle definition and cycle processing, and what are the various stakeholders going to do about this, right? I hope it is useful. We'll come up with another session talking about another important area, the outcome. Again, pretty standard report is already there. You can just, your team can just update the details as to what is the final outcome, right? I mean, in terms of pregnancy outcome and clinical pregnancy. And various other details in terms of how many fetal heartbeats and gestational sacs, how many. In general, there's a configuration for 3 gestational sacs, but if it's beyond that, if it's required, that can be done as well. But in general, as a standard, 3 sac level details are configured. But more is not a problem; it can be configured. So this kind of completes an IVF cycle processing. And small little things here and there, one can actually, complete cycle, cancel cycle in between. Cancellation is a very common phenomenon in cycles because at the time of OPU, let's say oocytes are not as expected. So there may be a need to cancel the cycle. So one additional